to branches is established very, very early on when they start coming out of that pouch. So it's very unlikely for koalas to fall out of their trees, and in fact falling to the ground is very uncommon for these animals, especially when they are healthy. So their very first instinct, and one that develops very early, is to immediately grab onto the tree or the branch in front of them if they feel like they are just around that. So it is incredibly rare for them to fall particularly far out of these trees because of how strong they are and that instinct for grabbing hold. And you can see the nose on their face as well, even on that little one. So it is quite a large nose, very powerful as well. So essentially they can smell when males are marking their territory. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. But they're also using their nose to find their appropriate food. So these animals don't have particularly brilliant eyesight. They're sleeping for about 20 hours every day, so kind of not particularly necessary for them to have long distance eyesight. But they can see the branches around them. So what they'll do is, similar to what Jenny was doing here, so you grab a branch, they drag the entire branch across their face, and they'll smell each individual leaf as they go. So it tells them a whole bunch of different things, but very basically, they are finding out what species that eucalyptus is, and where on that branch is the best place for them to start eating to get the best available leaves for them. So they are, of course, going for usually quite young leaves. There are some species that koalas will eat more mature leaves of, but it does quite often come down to the preference of that individual koala. So with over 800 different species of eucalyptus here in Australia, koalas generally do have quite a bit of quite a lot of options, but unfortunately, as a species, koalas will only eat about 40 to 50 of those 800 species of eucalypts, and an individual koala usually averages about 5 or 6 different types. If they're particularly lucky and it's growing quite abundantly, they might eat anywhere up to about 10. But here at Wildlife, our koalas are a little bit spoiled. We do have a list of upwards of about 30 different eucalypt species that we are able to cut in the surrounding areas and provide for our koalas. So for these guys, they are receiving 3 different types every day, and those 3 different types will change throughout the weeks as well. So of course, our individual koalas do have preferences for species, and that preference will change throughout the year as well, and that's just because there are different minerals and nutrients available depending on the season. Now, being an animal that is sitting very high in our eucalypt trees that can grow anywhere up to about 40 or 50 meters tall. So they remove that. Moment that is not his mum. So with these animals, they are sitting very high in our eucalypt trees that can grow to about 40 or 50 meters tall, but they are generally spending most of their time stationary, so they are sleeping in one position. So they're not drawing a lot of attention to themselves, and it does mean that they are in fact quite safe in regards to predation. So we do have predators here in Australia that will absolutely prey on our koalas, things like our dingoes and our birds of prey. Very opportunistic for these species, so they're generally going for the easiest prey items available to them, and koalas spending very little time on the ground means that they are not kind of classified as easy prey. So they will only generally go for very young animals that have been separated from their mother, or ill or injured animals on the ground. So healthy koalas in their tree is very, very safe. This is the case with our introduced predators as well, so things like dogs and foxes. Again, they're going for very opportunistic prey on koalas. They're always going to go for a very easy option for them, which our koalas generally are not. So koalas are very easy, or very lucky in regards to their lack of predation. Where they are unfortunately unlucky is all of their dealings with humans. For these animals are found exclusively on the east coast of Australia, and this is also where a majority of our human population is found, and where some of our larger cities have been built. roads to get in between them here in Australia, we are unfortunately destroying our natural habitat to do that. And in the past 200 years since colonisation here in Australia, unfortunately our koalas have lost anywhere up to about 70% of their original habitat. This is not something that's happened in the past and has ceased at present. It does continue even now and will likely continue into the future as well, because unfortunately here in Australia we're losing anywhere up to about a football field's worth of our natural forest every hour due to deforestation. So this is something that impacts our koalas quite heavily, but it is not the only thing that is impacting them negatively. So they're also impacted by disease. This is an animal that is very well known for having chlamydia in the wild. It's very easily spread amongst them. It does affect their eyesight and their respiratory systems, and it's very difficult to treat in these animals because the antibiotics that we would use to kill that disease, it does unfortunately negatively affect their gut bacteria as well. So there are ways to replace it, but it can be quite difficult and quite a long process. So there's been a lot of research into how we can improve that treatment for this disease and potentially create vaccinations or preventative measures for it in our koalas. And thankfully in the last few years in particular, they have developed a vaccine for chlamydia in koalas. And that vaccine has been approved for rollout in this year. So it has actually been used so far, and it has been successful so far in that very short usage. So it's very exciting to see what kind of positive impact that might have on our koalas in the future. Now, unfortunately as well, it doesn't stop there. They are also impacted by climate change. And regardless of how you or what you believe the cause of climate change is, you cannot deny our climate is changing. And the way that we see that here in Australia in particular is with very extreme weather events. So with things like our flooding and our fire seasons. So with our fire seasons in particular, this can be quite common in Australia. We're a country that does fairly regularly burn. And in the past, it has been used in quite a regenerative way. Now, unfortunately, what we're seeing in more recent years is much more extreme fire seasons. So in particular, our last fire season here in New South Wales was about 6 years ago. In 2020, you guys might know it as Black Summer. It was unfortunately a very extended season, and in that one we saw some very large, very hot, very fast-moving fires. So where our animals in the past have been able to outrun those fires, they're now actually being overtaken by those fire fronts and the speed of them. And where our vegetation has been regenerated, it's now unfortunately being destroyed by those temperatures. So in that particular fire season, it's estimated that we lost anywhere up to about 58,000 koalas. So that is quite a few. And unfortunately, with all of these negative impacts for our koalas, all of these things that are impacting them in the wild in particular, they have been in decline for quite a while. And they now, as of 2022, here in New South Wales, have been classified as an endangered species. So there are studies that suggest that if we don't try to reverse some of that impact, or at the very least lessen some of our future impact on these animals, we could lose them here in New South Wales completely in the wild by 2050. So it's obviously a very fast decline for one of our most iconic species, and definitely not something that we want to happen here in Australia. So there are some things that we can do to help to lessen our impact on them and hopefully prevent that from happening here in New South Wales. So we're not asking you guys to change your entire life around our koalas. That is unrealistic and unsustainable. What we're asking you guys to do when you leave our zoo today is, when you're doing any form of shopping in the future, to be a more conscious consumer. So overconsumption does have a negative impact on all of our natural environments around the world, not just here in Australia. So if you can recycle or reuse before you purchase something new, please do so. When it comes to things like your paper products, please go for recycled options. They are available quite widely. And if you can't go with that, go for something that has an FSC logo on it. So that means that any paper or card is coming from sustainably planted forests, not from our natural habitats. From there, you guys will hopefully see that that is quite an easy change for you to make and stick to. And from there, you'll be able to do a little bit more of your own research and find other changes that you can make to be able to reduce your impact on these natural environments in the future. So I'm going to leave it about there for our koalas today, guys. These koalas are really distracting me over the back here. So thank you for coming out to to wildlife today. If you do have any questions, you're welcome to come over and have a chat with any of the keepers that you see. It's a real privilege for us to be able to work with all of these animals, and we're very passionate about what we do, and we're very happy to share any of our knowledge with you if you are interested as well. So thank you for coming out to wildlife today, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.